able to do that. So I have worked at Rotary for 17 years, which is an incredibly long time. And out of those, I've worked for 14 years in the peace building area. And somehow I'm still here. And the reason that I'm still here is because we have done so much, and there is always something else that we are ready to do and starting to do. And so I still think that we are in the process of realizing Rotary's potential for peace. But I also believe, and I'm not just saying this because, I'm giving a presentation, I really do believe that we are on the cusp of something pretty big. And so I really encourage all of you to ask questions at the end of the presentation, and most importantly to really think about how you can be a part of the variety of different things that Rotary's doing. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen. Let's hope this works, and then just get it onto the slideshow. Give me 1 second. All right. Okay, so as Jim mentioned, I am the area focus manager, which in this position, I've been the area focus manager for about a decade. And I always, when I'm in a room full of people, I will typically ask, in what year do you think Rotary started their peace building work? So for the heck of it, why don't we, in the chat, if you'd like to put, what year do you think Rotary started its peace building work? And I won't be able to see the chat easily because I'm presenting. Okay, here we go. I got it. So who wants to put, what year do you think that Rotary started its peace building work? I'll wait for just a couple of answers. Oh, and I've gone to the new slide. 2022. Oh, okay. That's one. 1968. Okay. I haven't heard that one before. I'm curious about that one. Oh, 2002, Jen. Was that it? 1925, good. 1905, hello, Pietro. Pietro has heard me ask this question before. Oh, 1922, okay. All right, wonderful. So it's a trick question because there's actually no right question, but there are a couple of dates that I like to throw out there. The first one is 1905, because that is the founding of Rotary. That is where the first inklings of wanting some type of organization that brought different people together. We can also look at the founding of our foundation that really looked at goodwill, peace, and international understanding. And then we can fast forward to, let's see if anyone put 2002 here. No. Well, we have 1945, the Rotary being integral in the founding of the United Nations. But 2002 was when we started our Rotary Peace Fellowship program, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that to me was the first time that our organization said, we are going to dedicate our own resources to investing in the education of peace builders. So that was a really huge step. And so you can look at all of these dates and say that, Rotary has this long history of peace. But it was actually a decade ago when I started in this position as the area of focus for peace building and conflict prevention. It's only been 10 years since Rotary has been doing community-based peace building work. In our grant models up until 2014, we actually did not encourage and sometimes didn't even allow Rotary members to work in this space. So while peace building is quite old and it's in all of us, it's in what we believe and what we work towards, the actual idea of working in peace building at the community level is quite new. And I say that because we are still building our portfolio, building our expertise and our suite of skills that we can help communities, where we can help communities build sustainable peace at the local level. So over the last couple of years, we've actually worked really hard to develop a much more comprehensive mission and vision statement. And I don't have the whole thing written down here, but I did take an excerpt because what we are trying to do through Rotary as Rotary members is create the environments where lasting peace is possible. So our peace initiatives aim to create more peaceful societies through our ability to convene and mobilize locally to affect global change. So there's a couple things in here that I wanted to point out. First of all, we have specific peace initiatives, but we're also trying to create the environments for peace. So that means when you're working in water, in education, disease prevention and treatment, you can be building those pillars of more peaceful societies. And we're even developing tools so you can actually do that more intentionally. But we're not just looking at our specific peace initiatives. We're looking at all of the work that Rotary does and how we can actually do it in a more intentional way to build peace. And then the other thing that's in this relatively short statement is this idea that all Rotary is local, but we also have those connections to the global. So when we work locally and we're there in our communities for the long term, we leverage the local resources, but are also able to connect in to a global network that no other organization on earth has. So have we leveraged it to our best ability for peace? No, but it is there for us to work with. So I'll talk a little bit more about how we can think about working through our networks, because that is what Rotary is so good at, is convening and networking. So where are we? Where are we in peace building? And again, like I mentioned earlier, it's a really long story. So I've tried to kind of sum it up into these 4 blocks, which I look at being such a strong foundation for Rotary. So peace is part of our DNA. As I mentioned in my opening comments, we can no longer just rely on governments, large multilateral institutions to say, okay, well, they're the ones that are going to build the peace. It needs to happen within all of us, within our communities. And again, peace building really is in the DNA of Rotary. So I see Rotary as a catalyst for bringing down peace building from only being in the realm of governments or these large organizations to actually bringing it out to like a citizen-based peace building movement. So we're in a really, really important position because in the second block, we are uniquely placed. A lot of what peace building, a lot of how peace building happens, if you're looking at governments, is that you have a government in X country coming in and working in another country, and they don't know that context. They don't understand the conflict oftentimes to the degree that's needed. And so looking at our ability to understand our connections that we have in country and our longevity, we're not leaving as Rotary members. We are in those communities to stay. And so how can we take that responsibility and really move and really leverage our unique position? And then again, counting on and relying on our global network. A lot of Rotary members don't realize this, but we are actually the largest volunteer organization, and I would even say largest organization that focuses on peace, that has dedicated resources towards peace building. This is something that we should be spreading the word to and with other Rotary members that might not know this, so they can begin to understand what that actually means for Rotary. And then the 4th block are really our strong foundations, because we have such a strong foundation, even though we have a lot of work to do. We have our Rotary Peace Centers, we have our Global Grant Scholars, we have the work that we've done even in other areas of focus that have kind of laid the ground for deepening peace building work. And we also have the work with the Institute for Economics and Peace and another collaboration, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. So we have these really strong foundations, but where do we need to go? We need to take these strong foundations and really start to deepen our capacity. As Rotary members, and probably not necessarily people on this call, but in general, Rotary members need to understand more deeply what peace building means. what it means to work within communities, what is needed in those communities, and really deepening our own sense of our skills and our theory and practice in peace building. And then the second action that we need to start moving towards is taking the wonderful club projects that we have. Clubs are really great at getting things going and doing individual club projects, but those tend to be small and they tend to be short-lived. So what we really want to start seeing is moving from just club-based small-scale projects into larger scale collective action, because we can actually have such a greater impact if we're talking to each other across clubs and across districts, across zones, and coming up with more regional planning to actually both resolve the conflict that has happened, but also prevent new conflicts from coming. And then if we are able to do that, deepen our capacity and move towards collective action, we are better placed to ensure positive change. So these are things that as myself, as the area focus manager, are really focused on over the next 3 years to move Rotary to like the next level in our peace building work. So in our global grants, I'm really not going to spend a ton of time on global grants, but we have a good portfolio of grants. I will say that the majority of grants are still scholarships. That is an area that we need to improve. Again, that really speaks to this idea of the community-based peace building really only being 10 years old. Rotary clubs and Rotary members have been doing global grant scholars for a long time, but we're trying to move. Scholarships are great, but we also need to look at increasing the number of community-based peace building projects. And then within those projects, like at the heart, what are we trying to do in communities? And this really comes back in my mind to education and capacity building, because as Rotarians, as people, we are trying to enhance the capacity of individuals and their communities to transform conflict and build peace. There are a lot of ways that we can do that, but at a fundamental level, it almost always comes back to education and capacity building. So in the 10 years that we've been doing global grants, we've spent about $35 million only in global grants. So it does not include the Rotary Peace Centers. And we've had about 770 grants roughly since this slide was created. That obviously has gone up, but this is an area that we certainly can focus on a little bit more. So now I want to talk about, I had those where we are and then where we're going, and how are we going to do that? So again, kind of really doubling down on what are Rotary's strengths and what do we see Rotary members kind of naturally gravitate towards. And that really is this education and capacity building piece that then enables Rotary members and community members to do more on the ground work in a much more informed and sustainable way. So I'm going to talk about 3 goals that we have and we hope to roll out over the next 3 years within Rotary of where we want to go. So the first strategic direction that we're focusing on is really like starting at home. So developing more robust educational programs that allow Rotary members to strengthen their peace building knowledge and skills. Now, this is going to take many different forms, but what we really hope to have is both an online resource, so an online library of courses, alongside in-person opportunities where we can leverage the already existing district conferences, zone institutes, even a club meeting. How can we use those gathering venues, those gathering places to be educational opportunities? And there'll be new ones as well, but really looking at how we blend the online asynchronous learning with the in-person synchronous learning to develop much more capacity and understanding for peace building within Rotary membership. Okay, there I go. All right, and all of these strategic directions intentionally blend together. So once we have educated our membership, or continue to educate our membership, I should say, we really want to create, support, and I will even say equip here, regional networks for peace. So there's a couple of people on the call that I know have gone through our Rotary Positive Peace Activator program, which I'm going to go into detail in just a couple of slides. But those essentially have been regional networks that we have trained in the positive peace framework. And I see those networks as the seed for creating these larger, what I'm trying to navigate or move towards calling them ecosystems of action. Because it's not just a network, you actually have to have people doing things. So, right now, what we're really thinking about deeply at Rotary International is how do you incentivize and motivate people to work together towards certain goals? And there's actually research on this that gives us great insight into how to make that possible. So the third bullet point here is equipping and supporting these networks so they are able to have impact. And again, we're not like recreating the Rotary wheel at all because we have so many of these positions already in place. It's about being more intentional about what we would like to see them do. And of course, we would include Rotary Peace Fellows in here as well as a very essential resource for our networks. And then the third strategic direction that we are really concentrating on is how to incorporate concepts of peace building theory in practice into the other areas of focus, project and program. So this is from service all the way to programs of scale. How do we look at peace building not only as just like the singular area of focus, but as a cross-cutting framework for all of our areas? Because that is actually the strength of peace building and of Rotary, is this integration into all of the work that we do, because it's really a mindset that we are trying to incorporate into every project that Rotary undertakes. So there's some specific materials that some of it we've actually already put together. And what we've actually done over the last 6 months, for those of you familiar with the Positive Peace Framework, I know a lot of you are, we're actually using that also as a peace building framework for a water project, a literacy project. And so you are looking at all the pillars of peace building within the projects that you do. Oh, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about, and people probably have heard me talk about this, because those are the three strategic directions that we're going, but it also is kind of sitting in this broader framework of how we think about peace building, which I think, I don't know if people were thinking about that 10 years ago, but we're definitely starting to think about it now. So some of you may have heard the clocks versus cloud problems. This is like one of my favorite ways of describing peace building. If you have a clock, or a watch or something, and it breaks, it stops ticking, you can take it apart, or you take it to a clock maker or watch fixer, and they can take it apart and they can more or less understand how you can put it back together to make it start running again. It's relatively straightforward if you have all the right pieces. A water project, you could think about that in this way, right? If a well breaks down, you more or less know hopefully how to get it back running to get the water pumping again. So those are clock problems. But we run into problems when we, like this slide says, apply clock-like fixes to cloud-like problems. So the difference between a clock and a cloud is a cloud-like problem is a much more complicated problem. And it's a more complicated problem because it's living in an ecosystem. So a cloud is in an ecosystem. It's moving because the wind is pushing it. It's also it's changing shape because you might have precipitation, you might have different pressure in the air, but there are all of these different factors that change the shape of the cloud. Peace building is a cloud-like problem. So I think a lot of the time when we think about peace building, we're kind of approaching it from a clock-like perspective. We're trying to get the answer and we have a timeline and we want to get it done. And those types of problems like don't work that way. So we are starting to try to shift our own mindsets in terms of how we think about peace building. So we're thinking about of yes, there's peace building projects, but it's also about a frame of reference and how we're thinking about things. And we've been doing a lot of work with the Institute, and I'll talk about the partnership in just a moment. And I'm not going to get too deep. We could have an hour, hours and hours about systems thinking, but we're really starting to think more about peace building and looking at the systems of peace. How do the systems of peace work? And this slide is somewhat complicated, but really what you have to think about is just like I said in the beginning, when we have to kind of get away from thinking that the United Nations or the World Bank or governments, they're the ones that are going to fix all of the problems, because we tend to think about peace building up there, right? At this like the international community, this big system. But the truth about systems is that, yes, you have these big systems, but you also have these smaller systems that kind of come down. So you can even think about systems as like a household or your Rotary Club or a government or even like a local market. Those are all systems and have inputs. And so when we're thinking about the systemic nature, so the clouds and the atmospheres that are working, we have to think about those things, but don't get so overwhelmed where you're always just thinking about the biggest system possible. You can actually bring it down to a very local level and then start to see, you know, what's going on and where you might make change. And the bottom line of a systems approach is that you're thinking about the whole. You're thinking about the whole environment in which your project is working, as opposed to just these singular inputs. So it's widening your perspective. And there's lots of material I can share about this, but it's really important because if you look at a lot of the research and you just even think about your own like personal habits, when systems get going, and peace systems are very real, and so are cycles and systems of violence, you can get into a good system where one part of the system that's working will affect the other parts, and that will keep going to create what we call virtuous cycles. But then the other flip side is true. If one part of the system is not going well, then that affects other parts of the system and you get into a vicious cycle. So it's important when you think about peace building, and this is the mind shift we're trying to make, that you really start to look at what are these connections and these like causes. So we're trying to move, and it's not impossible, from some of these more vicious cycles to some of these more virtuous cycles. And it's not impossible, but it does take a shift in how you look at things. Okay, I always feel a little bit bad leaving people after those 3 slides because it's such a fascinating area. But I did want to talk about our partnership with the Institute for Economics and Peace, which is kind of where a lot of this thinking is not originated, but is kind of comes through. And I know that a lot of people know about this, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but I did want to, this has been a really important partnership for Rotary since 2017, and it has really slowly but surely helped us develop our own ways of thinking about peace building. But IEP's methodologies and their research and their frameworks are only one framework. I did really want to point that out. It is one way of looking at peace. It's comprehensive, but I would also say incomplete. So you also have to think about what other models you're thinking about to work within the IEP framework. But essentially, we've had a strategic partnership since 2017 that has really married our grassroots work with the research and the evidence-based reports that the Institute comes out with on the institutions and structures of peaceful societies. So again, we're looking at these structures and these institutions and these systems of peace as opposed to simply resolving conflict. Again, when we're thinking about how we think about peace, the whole basis of what we do with the Institute is really trying to move away, or not move away, I shouldn't say that, but understanding these two different types of peace. So when you have the idea of negative peace, which was coined by Johann Galtung in the 1960s, it's not something that the Institute created, but it's really this idea of you don't have active violence, you don't have active conflict or the fear of violence. And that's great. We all want that. That's a baseline that is super important. But if you don't address the root causes or the peace system that's operating, if you take out the security intervention, or if you don't address why people are being violent, then it will always return. So that's why we move to this more systemic view of positive peace, which is looking at the attitudes, institutions, and structures that actually both create peace, but then sustain it over the long run. Because as we all know, peace is not a one and done deal. You have to be, it's like a maintenance activity. For those of us in the US, the new positive peace report is coming out. I don't think we're going to get good news. Positive peace is not something that you achieve and then you just achieved it. It can also fall. And when positive peace falls, then you actually have the negative piece is destabilized. So they work together, but they are different. So just to remember that we're not totally operating in a silo here, but the pillars of positive peace also correlate to the work that we do in the other areas of focus. And this is actually something that we're trying to strengthen and use these pillars to be able to create stronger projects and programs within our areas of focus. And I'm not doing a deep dive on the pillars because I don't have time, but again, if you want more information, I'm happy to follow up with it. So within the partnership, we do a lot of things. I would really encourage everyone take the Positive Peace Academy if you have not done that. That is a free online course that really takes you through everything I've just touched on really briefly, but it really allows you to kind of understand the philosophy of the Institute, how they're working with Rotary, how Rotary is using the work to improve the ways that we work in peace. So that I really highly recommend if you haven't done that. So we have the Academy. We also have resources for local and regional projects if you ever want to do that. We have put out blogs, social media posts. We have local chapters that do presentations all the time. And we also have our in-depth educational program, which is a Positive Peace Activator program, which I think it's my next slide. Let me see. Oh, this is the slide that I just talk about how incredible our reach has been, which it has been quite good. I think I will not go into so much detail here, but through all the people that we've trained, we actually have reached over 1 million people, through social media, impressions. So people are really getting at least these first touches, right, of what Rotary is doing and what the IEP is doing. And so while that might not be resolving a war, it is tuning people into what peace actually is, which is really, really important. Okay, so let me just talk briefly about our activator program, because I don't know if you caught this or if I said this, but in the strategic direction, we really want to grow and expand the Positive Peace Activator program. So this was created in 2020, and it's really our flagship educational program between Rotary and the Institute. We have now trained over 250 activators from 72 countries. how many cohorts has this been? From 7 cohorts. So we've done every single region except for the Middle East, North Africa, which we will be doing just before our Istanbul Peace Conference. And I hope everyone can come to the Istanbul Peace Conference in February 2025. But this has really been a deep dive in education and capacity building, as well as network building, which is like kind of hearkening back to those 2 strategic goals. So our hope is within the next 3 years or 2 years that this program actually becomes a program of Rotary International, where we're able to expand and train, not just in the positive peace framework that will remain central, but in other areas as well. So we're expanding our educational programming. So these are all the different continents that are regions that we've trained. So a lot of you were in the very first training in 2020 in North America. We've had it South America, Europe, East and West Africa, Asia, and then we just finished in the Oceania region just a couple weeks ago. So aside from what we're doing with the Institute, we also have a lot of projects that are happening outside of global grants. We've had these local trainings by our activators in many of the regions. We've had the Youth Peace and Action zone level program that I think just finished last year. We've had youth trainings in Ecuador, Venezuela, and Peru, where there was wide scale peace education training for Rotary clubs in those countries. We've started an initiative in 2 zones in the United States to combat toxic polarization. And we have about a month ago just finally uploaded our beautiful, beautiful online course on forgiveness and societal healing, which I really recommend that you all take, especially right now in this time and space. It is a really wonderful course, and it's pretty cutting edge because a lot of forgiveness work does not actually like go out into the societal space. And that is something that was created for Rotary. And so I really encourage you all to take a look at it. All right, and I think this is like almost the end, but in March of this year, we started a collaboration with the Carter School at George Mason University, which is the oldest school for peace and conflict resolution in the United States. And this was initiated by a gift by the late Rotary member David Fishman, which some of you may have known, but he really had a vision, that there was some place for Rotary to work with the Carter School, given Carter's focus on praxis, which is the education and the practice combined. So over the next, let me see, it's been 3 months. Over the next 9 months, we're going to continue to look at what peace programs we can incubate and accelerate. So these are peace programs that have a lot of potential. And we want to work with the Rotary members that had these ideas and try to get them off the ground. It's not like we have a ton of money, but we're trying to help them get to the next level. We're also going to be holding peace salons, which are intimate gatherings for Rotary members to listen to Carter faculty, learn more about peace building, and then also just get excited about the potential for what we can do. Carter is going to be helping us design a curriculum for what that strategic priority number 1 looks like. So what are the skills that are best suited to Rotary members, and how can we deliver that to them? And then finally, they have an incredible databases and resources that really look at evidence-based approaches to peace, which is called the Better Evidence Project. So we're talking both about making it available to Rotary members to understand what has happened in the field, what is tested, and what works, and then also potentially putting a database together for Rotary projects that are working on peace. All right, I'm going to skip this one because I've already talked about it quite a bit. So I'm just going to say thank you. And then really just open it up for questions. And I hope I did okay on time.
You did absolutely perfect. And I like people to use the reaction, the hand, for questions so that I will see them if you raise your hand in reactions. And Richard Denton has a question.
Thank you very much, Jim, and thank you, Rebecca, for this wonderful presentation. Your first strategic plan talked about education, and a fellow Rotarian has developed a course called Ending War 101. And I'm wondering if it's possible to get that put into my Rotary, the Learning Center on Peace. You also talked about alliances with IEP. I'm wondering, partnership, I'm wondering if World Beyond War could be recognized as a partner through Rotary International. It's certainly recognized and works with the Rotary Action Group for Peace, has several pilot projects going with them, but I'm just wondering if that might be a possibility.
Well, I like to say anything is a possibility. Yes, I think that we could certainly talk about that offline. I do believe that I think Rotarians have the ability to upload to the Learning Center, in my experience. I'm not sure if that's been, your experience, but we're still in the midst of putting together the curriculum. But I do know about Ending War 101, and that would be something that we would certainly be able to look at. Partnerships within Rotary are quite complicated, to say the least. But of course, we're always open to those conversations as well. So thank you.
Yeah, another one is Peace on Earth by 2030.
Mhm.
And again, several Rotarians, I think we're up to about 20 or more Rotarians are taking that course. And that would be another one to upload.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Any other questions?
Jim, this is Tom. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Tom.
I got my hand up. Is that all right?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's on a white background. I'm sorry I didn't catch it. But anyway, Tom, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Where we are, we lost our power, so I'm on the hotspot.
Oh,
Okay, so, okay.
Oh,
Do it
no.
the best we can. Okay. Rebecca, I just first of all want to say thank you for just not only the detail, but how positive your message is from my point of view. Because you talk about, when you talk about a cloud quote topic, how can you, be specific about it and detailed and yet still have a sense of hope and positiveness? I really enjoyed that. What I'd like to know is, how do we find out more about the Carter Preschool and the possibilities of being considered for an incubator or a trial?
Mhm.
And I think, you know me, I love looking at systemic issues, and like service learning is a pedagogy of learning that's taught worldwide. And we have a global grant where we're demonstrating that through service learning, and also Rotary Service Above Self.
Great.
I'm bringing in this nonviolence, which is around the world. And if we can demonstrate that on a regional level,
Mhm.
I think that'd be exciting. And I think, a lot of times just the idea also of peace builder clubs
Yep.
is a phenomenal way that clubs are connecting with each other to start.
Yeah.
And then we can build from there. So
Yeah.
those are just some of the things that I think Jim Roxlow's on here, and we can have some models. I'd like to follow up with you, Rebecca, and find out how do we get considered for an application for that.
Yeah, let's follow up on that. Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Tom. And I know you're
And then
doing
quietly,
incredible work, so thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to share with you tomorrow, I'm in the Virgin Islands, so we're talking with the school system. And one of the projects, if we get a yes, it'll take about a year to get it off the ground, is peace and social justice.
Awesome.
We're young people, they want learning elementary research about 10th grade. And we're using the 8 pillars of peace. Okay, and we're
Awesome.
doing partnerships on that. So wouldn't that be, we're hoping to have some evidence-based in about a year.
That's so awesome. Great. Thank you.
And Dennis Wong is the next hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. It's always good to see you, and also always interesting because conversation like this opens my mind to think of different things and in different ways. And one of the things I saw on the slide was the fact that we're the largest organization, kind of like focused on peace, and so it raised my expectations about where we should be and our leadership role and things like this. And I think one of the things, of course, an area which I've been involved in and is the United Nations. And that's where I think Rotary really, the United Nations needs somebody like Rotary to, rethink some of these things. And so I think that's, I think it's interesting as far as what should be our expectations as far as and our accomplishments in moving forward. And of course, looking forward to interested in what Stephanie Urchek and Mark Maloney, the new people, and RI and also the foundation, what they see and what they might be doing for peace in this coming Rotary year. So thank you for what you offered us, given us, and which raises many questions, right? Which I have, but I'll hold back on some of them.
It's hard to
Thanks,
fix the
Dennis.
cloud. The next question would be Omar.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Rebecca, for a very beautiful presentation. Your reference to the clock and cloud gave me a bit of an aha moment, reflecting on my experience in peacekeeping. It's leading me to understand why we never achieved all the objectives we set out to do. Keeps me thinking, and the previous speaker just mentioned collaboration with the United Nations. I still have an interest in doing that, specifically with the United Nations volunteers. I will try and reach out to my former colleagues. The generic terms of reference for those volunteers worldwide includes a provision that volunteers are expected, United Nations volunteers are expected to volunteer beyond their technical terms of reference. So imagine you posting someone, an expert, into a UNDP office or local government office with skills, but becoming members or collaborating with the Rotary clubs gives them a very close insight into the society, plus also connections and network with people in other walks of life that could be helpful. So I'll try and reach out again to, I think there's 1 or 2 people still there with whom I worked, and see if at all we can push this forward. The same thing applies to the main UN Secretariat. For example, I finished my work, came home, and the most important thing I've managed to do since then is joining Rotary. Right? Now, it also prepares these so-called experts to get involved in their home communities and reintegrate when they get home, because they will have a natural niche to seam into. But thank you very much. Would like to have a copy of your presentation. I think the way it was presented is very unique. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Omar. And just really quickly to follow up on the United Nations, I mean, you think Rotary is a bureaucracy. I mean, it's really overwhelming, but people like Omar that have connections. We also have been talking with some Rotary members in East Africa, and Omar, I'll get you connected in because the zone is all of Africa. But I think the key, what we've seen is like plugging into more local specific initiatives. Like right now they have the UN initiative for the Great Lakes region in Africa. So there might be, when there's a defined initiative, I think it's easier to get some collaboration going. So I'm hopeful that we can see that happening, but more on that later. Thank you so much, Omar, for your comment.
And by the way, this was recorded, and if anybody'd like a recording to show it to others, share this, because it was so beautifully done. Quanta, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. It was very, very nice presentation, and I got actually answers to a lot of things that has been in my mind. I wanted to ask if doing service projects at locally, like doing things, should also how we are being while we are doing. That means a peace education even among Rotarians while they're doing projects, how they are being with each other within the frame of four-way test, service above self, not worry about the funding so much and not about positions. So I was wondering if that can be somehow incorporated into your program.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely been talking specifically with the Carter School about taking it really down to the club level. I mean, we haven't gotten down to the like essentially like how we our presence with others as a peace building tool, which I personally believe in more than 100%. So I think that that's a very personal journey that we can manifest through whatever types of practices we have as individuals. But I think organizationally, we are definitely looking at how we interact with our club as like a very basic set of peace building principles, kind of like the idea of starting at home. And in this sense, it's like the home is the Rotary Club. I have been revisiting the four-way test because I think it's a really excellent peace building tool that people have said, but maybe we don't use it explicitly as a peace building tool. So I think that it's there, it's part of Rotary, so we should all be using it. And then we've also been talking about more, like, I guess you could say technical or specific capacities that deal more with like conflict resolution, how we are working with each other in the context of the club, in the context of a service project. And then also developing tools that can make the service project itself a peace building project. So there's like so many layers there, but yes to all of them, really.
And Dennis Wong has written a very wonderful article on the four-way test that he'd be happy to send to you, or I could. James Adams, you have your hand up, I believe. You're muted. Jim, you're muted.
I'm still a Zoomer novice, I have to admit, but in any case, the peace building and peace and conflict and war and all of this is a very broad subject, and I've been wrestling with the subject for some time. There's a number of components that each of you have been mentioning, and it could all easily fall within one strategic objective or another. But in connection with the UN International Day of Peace, September 21st this year, and 21st every year, we in the Peace Building Committee at the Boulder Rotary Club have done quite a bit of legwork up to this point in establishing an inaugural Peace Week in Boulder, Colorado. And it'll be multifaceted. There'll be various discussion panels and speakers, music performances, of peace-minded groups interspersed in these things. And the theme we've selected is Boulder Builds Peace.
Great.
So it's a little more action
Mm-hmm.
oriented or inducing than my initial thinking was, what is Boulder thinking about peace? And then have various peace-minded organizations and groups, including the University of Colorado. There are a good many organizations that work internationally and have representatives in Boulder or offices or in the area here. And so I'm thinking more of this as a first run at a Peace Week for public consumption, as opposed to academic university groups, strictly speaking, or even strictly speaking, peace building organizations. Just say all of the above, and have the different groups have information tables where they can talk about what they do at a peace fair that we're going to associate with these discussion panels and keynote speakers. So a question is, how would such a thing being directed at the public as a awareness raising effort on peace and conflict dynamics, particularly around the polarization complexities we experience currently, how would such a thing, a local, essentially a local discussion that directed at citizens, concerned citizens in particular, how would that be supported by Rotary International, Carter School, and other support entities in that citizen-directed effort? Now, I have to do a disclosure that I do have a PhD from the Carter School.
Oh,
And
great.
and I've worked many years overseas in peacekeeping operations, and I put pen to paper and put my two bits worth into it a few years ago, and I'm at the second book now. So when I say I see a lot of bits and pieces, that's for certain. And whatever suggestions you might have, or anyone might have about finding and encouraging good speakers to address a multitude of issues, peace building, careers and context, and interfaith communications. We're having 3 discussion panels, and we'll be exploring quite a few things. So however Rotary would look at that, I would be interested in hearing more about that.
Sure. Why don't we have that conversation maybe offline, and then I can look at what you put together so far, and then I can see, like where we could, I have ideas about what works, and, in terms of igniting interest from the general public, which is not always that easy, and sustaining that from the general public. But yeah, I think it would be good to have that conversation offline, but happy to have it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll connect you later, Jim.
Okay.
And I can talk to you later. I'll be up there, and I can put a booth for IAP up there too.
Cool.
So we can talk on many things. Dennis, you have a quick question?
Yeah, I just want to say that the last couple comments were very interesting about getting it really at the public level, club level, and also to the outside the public. And I like the idea of the idea of arts and for peace.
Yeah.
And our club, our district actually for this coming year, we've named our peace program as Opus for Peace, and using the arts. And one of the things that we have scheduled in August is really an opera related to peace building. So we're going to have the opera at the library, and inviting the general public. And so I think it's different ways of getting the word out.
Yeah.
And I think, and also, again, I think what Rebecca is really terrific, that getting at the club level, giving the clubs some support to reach out. So I think that's really right on and in the right direction. So thank you. And also, by the way, in addition to four-way tests, consider the Rotarian Code of Conduct. I think we always underestimate that. And the thing is, we need it today about acting with integrity and high ethical standards, dealing with others with fairness and respect, and mentoring young people and helping people with special needs and improving people's quality of life in our community and the world. So I think don't forget the Rotarian, and we say when we join Rotary, they say, "I will." So just remember that.
So true.
You're very right. The code of ethic is much too forgotten, a very valuable tool. Rebecca, wow. Any one last question? Sandra, is your hand up?
Yeah, my hand is up real
Okay.
quickly here. I didn't hear
Yeah.
any mention of how we could create hands of peace amongst our youth. I don't see enough of that going on here. And I would feel strongly that's where a lot of this has to begin. There are issues in the world right now we're all aware of, where youth needs to be taught, and it's important what they're taught. And I know we're at the end of the call, so it's not time to get into all of that now, but I would like to think we could do more of that. Hands in peace, or a model United Nations amongst our youngsters.
Yeah.
If we had more time, I would connect you with a gentleman on this call here, Tom Carlisi, and several others that are doing phenomenal programs. And what you're suggesting is one of the challenges we have is what's out there, who's doing what. And so the real question is, how do we connect with all these phenomenal tools that are available to us? There are some tremendous programs out there. Once you learn more about IEP, the Academy is a valuable tool. And actually, you don't have your tool, Rebecca, that you created, the design tool, that needs to be more in front of people.
Yeah.
And I just did a talk on that to a club using that tool.
Awesome.
There
Yeah.
are some very valuable
coming.
tools out
Yeah. It's coming.
yeah, Tom, you got 30 seconds. But
That's what I'm gonna say. As
and
this,
I mean, here's Tom Cardi's who can't say his name in 30 seconds. So the floor.
this is to Rebecca. You've given so much, and I want to have the circle of giving and receiving. A rhetorical. If you came back a year from now, what would you like to have see happen that we could give back to you? Just a rhetorical. Okay. So we are giving, not just receiving.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Jim, for making this happen.
Hang on.
We're not going yet.
First of all, what we can give to Rebecca is wonderful grants. That's the whole purpose of all of this. Let's go build some great grants. She's got money, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, she has money she wants to give you. So let's figure out what to do with it. But Rebecca, we thank you so much. We are indeed grateful for the work, what you do, and the information you bring to us. And we thank you for taking the time to share your wonderful knowledge and expertise with us. But I also want to talk about next month. We are so honored to also be joined by Summer Lewis.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Summer is the Rotary International Coordinator for the Rotary International and Institute for Economics and Peace Partnership. And she will share some exciting new information about the relationship. So we will get well in depth. And to anyone who would like, send me an email. And if you'd like to use a copy of this wonderful program, Rebecca, Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone. It was lovely. Until next time.
Until next time.